The snow was falling gently outside the frosted windows of my mother's Victorian home, the same house where I'd spent countless Christmases as a child. The scent of cinnamon and pine filled the air, and the twinkling lights on the massive tree cast a warm glow over the assembled family. It should have been perfect. It would have been perfect if not for what happened next. My daughter Emma, all of 8 years old with her dark curls bouncing as she excitedly unwrapped a present, suddenly froze when my mother's voice cut through the cheerful chatter like a blade through silk. "You're not my granddaughter." "Get out." The words hung in the air like poison, and I watched as Emma's face crumpled, her small hands still clutching the half-opened gift. The room fell silent except for the crackling of the fireplace, and I felt my world tilt on its axis. "Mom, what did you just say?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the blood rushing in my ears. Margaret Chen Williams, my adoptive mother of 32 years, stood rigid by the mantelpiece, her perfectly coiffed silver hair catching the light, her designer dress immaculate as always. According to YouTube analytics, 99.6% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Her cold blue eyes fixed on Emma with disgust that made my stomach lurch. "You heard me, Sarah. That child is not my blood. She's not family. I won't pretend anymore." Emma began to cry, soft, hiccuping sobs that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. My husband David immediately moved to comfort her, scooping her into his arms, but the damage was done. My other relatives, my adoptive siblings, their spouses, their children, all stared in stunned silence. "Mom, Emma is your granddaughter." "She's my daughter." "Your adopted daughter," Margaret interrupted sharply, "just like you were my adopted daughter. But unlike you, I never pretended to love that child. I tolerated her for your sake, but I'm done pretending. This is a family gathering, and she doesn't belong here." The cruelty in her voice was breathtaking. I had always known Margaret was cold, calculating, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. Emma was sobbing openly now, asking through her tears why Grandma Margaret was being mean to her. "We're leaving," I said, my voice shaking with rage and heartbreak. "David, get Emma's coat." "Sarah, don't be dramatic," Margaret said dismissively. "You're welcome to stay. Just take the child somewhere else." That was when something inside me snapped. Not broke, snapped, like a taut wire finally reaching its breaking point. "Her name is Emma," I said quietly, dangerously. "And she is my daughter." My child. And if she's not welcome here, then neither am I. Margaret's expression didn't change. "That's your choice." We left in a flurry of coats and tears, Emma clinging to me as David carried our gifts to the car. The drive home was silent, except for Emma's occasional sniffles. When we finally got her settled in bed, she looked up at me with those wide, innocent eyes. "Mommy, why doesn't Grandma Margaret love me?" I smoothed her hair and kissed her forehead. "Some people have broken hearts, sweetheart. It's not about you. You are perfect and loved and wanted." But as I sat in the dark hallway outside her room, listening to make sure she'd fallen asleep, I made a decision that would change everything. Margaret wanted to play games about what made a family. Fine, I would show her exactly what family meant, and what it cost when you broke it. The research took me 3 weeks. I hired a private investigator, something I never thought I'd do, but Margaret had declared war on my child, and I intended to win. What we uncovered was a web of lies, manipulation, and secrets that went back decades. Margaret Chen Williams wasn't the grieving widow and devoted mother she portrayed herself to be. She was a calculating woman who had adopted me not out of love, but as part of an elaborate insurance fraud. My biological mother had been Margaret's sister, a detail she'd hidden from me my entire life. My mother had died in a car accident when I was 2, leaving me a substantial trust fund that Margaret had been managing and slowly embezzling from for 30 years. But that wasn't all. The private investigator discovered that Margaret had been having an affair throughout her marriage to my adoptive father, and that the man she'd been seeing was married to her best friend. When her lover's wife died under suspicious circumstances, Margaret had convinced him to take out a massive life insurance policy on his new wife, Margaret's best friend, with Margaret as the beneficiary. The more I learned, the sicker I felt. This woman had raised me. I had called her mother. I had brought my daughter to her house, trusted her with my child's heart. But now I had ammunition, and I intended to use it. I started slowly, subtly. Margaret prided herself on her standing in the community, her reputation as a pillar of society. She was on the board of 3 charities, chaired the hospital fundraising committee, and belonged to the most exclusive country club in town. First, I reached out to Emma's school counselor and explained what had happened. The counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, was horrified and immediately arranged for Emma to speak with the school psychologist. She also provided me with documentation of the emotional trauma Emma was experiencing, nightmares, anxiety, questions about her own worth and belonging. Then I contacted a family lawyer. The trust fund my biological mother had left me legally should have been mine at 18, but Margaret had managed to keep control by claiming I was emotionally immature and having the terms extended. The lawyer confirmed that Margaret had been illegally accessing and using funds that belonged to me, to the tune of nearly $800,000 over the years. But the real masterstroke came from an unexpected source: my adoptive brother, Michael. Michael called me 2 weeks after Christmas, his voice shaking. "Sarah, we need to talk. About Mom." "About what?" she said to Emma. We met at a coffee shop downtown, and Michael looked haggard, older than his 35 years. "I've been thinking about Christmas, and I can't stop thinking about something that happened when we were kids. Do you remember when I brought home that stray dog? I was maybe 10. I remembered. Michael had found a scraggly mutt and begged Margaret to let him keep it. She'd said yes, but the next morning the dog was gone. She claimed it had run away. "Sarah," Michael said, his eyes filled with tears, "I saw her. I saw Mom put that dog in her car and drive away. I followed her. She took it to the pound and told them it was aggressive, that it needed to be put down immediately." My blood ran cold. "Michael, she killed my dog because she didn't want the inconvenience, and then she lied to me about it for 25 years. She let me believe I hadn't been careful enough, that I'd lost him." He looked up at me with haunted eyes. "What she said to Emma—" "Sarah, I think our mother is a sociopath." Michael had more stories, small cruelties over the years that he'd dismissed as Margaret being strict or practical. The time she'd thrown away his science project the night before it was due because he'd left supplies on the kitchen counter. The way she'd systematically undermined his relationships, always finding reasons why his girlfriends weren't good enough. How she'd convinced him not to take a job in California because family stays together, then spent years making him feel guilty for not being successful enough. "I'll help you," he said finally. "Whatever you're planning, I'll help." The plan came together beautifully. Margaret's annual charity gala was coming up in February, the event she spent months planning, the crown jewel of her social calendar. It was her moment to shine, to bask in the admiration of the community's elite. I bought a table, paid for it with my own money I'd earned building my marketing consulting business from nothing. I invited very specific guests: the district attorney, whom I'd met through professional networking, the head of the state insurance commission, whose daughter had gone to school with Emma, the president of Margaret's Country Club, who happened to be one of my clients, and several journalists from the local newspaper. The night of the gala, Margaret was in her element. She wore a stunning silver gown, her hair perfectly styled, working the room like the society queen she believed herself to be. I watched her from across the ballroom, feeling nothing but cold determination. When it came time for her speech, the moment when she would thank everyone for their support and announce the funds raised for the Children's Hospital, I made my move. I had prepared a presentation, a slideshow that I'd spent weeks perfecting. Michael had agreed to handle the technical aspects, using his access to the hotel's audio-visual system through his work as an event coordinator. As Margaret stepped up to the podium, smiling and gracious, the lights dimmed for her presentation. But instead of her carefully crafted speech about helping sick children, the screen lit up with something else entirely. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, standing up at my table, my voice carrying clearly through the room's sound system, "before Mrs. Williams speaks about helping children, I think you should know how she treats the children in her own family." The first slide was a photo of Emma from Christmas morning, tears streaming down her face, still clutching her half-opened present. The second was the audio recording I'd made of our conversation with the school psychologist, documenting the emotional trauma my daughter had suffered. But then came the real revelations. Financial documents showing the embezzlement, insurance records, private investigator reports, photo evidence of Margaret's affair, including pictures of her entering hotel rooms with her lover while his wife was dying. Margaret's face went white, then red, then white again. She tried to speak, but Michael had locked the microphone to my audio feed. Security moved toward me, but the DA at my table held up a hand, his attention fixed on the screen. "The woman you're about to honor," I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "told my 8-year-old daughter that she wasn't family, that she didn't belong, and ordered her to leave a family gathering. This is the same woman who has stolen nearly $1 million from her own adopted daughter's trust fund, committed insurance fraud, and has spent 30 years manipulating and psychologically abusing everyone around her." The room was in chaos. People were shouting, security was confused about who to stop, and Margaret was trying desperately to regain control of the situation. But it was too late. The damage was done, broadcasted not just to the room, but to the local news station, whose cameras had been rolling to cover the society event. "The saddest part," I concluded, "is that she did all of this while claiming to care about children, while sitting on the board of a children's hospital, while raising money for children's charities. I wonder how much of that money actually made it to the children it was meant to help." I clicked off the presentation and walked calmly toward the exit. Margaret finally found her voice, screaming after me about lies and betrayal and lawsuits. But her words were drowned out by the buzz of conversation, the click of phones recording, and the questions being shouted by reporters. Michael caught up with me in the parking lot. "Jesus, Sarah, you really went nuclear." "She hurt my child," I said simply. She looked at my daughter, a innocent little girl, and decided to break her heart for no reason other than cruelty. "Did you think I was going to send a strongly worded letter?" The aftermath was swift and brutal. The DA opened an investigation into the trust fund embezzlement. The Insurance Commission launched their own investigation. Margaret was asked to step down from all her charity boards pending the outcome of various investigations. The country club suspended her membership. But the social consequences were perhaps the most devastating for someone like Margaret. She became a pariah overnight. The woman who had built her entire identity around her social status found herself completely isolated, whispered about, shunned. My adoptive siblings' reactions were mixed. Michael stood by me completely. even testifying about the financial irregularities he'd noticed over the years. My sister Lisa was angry at first, claiming I'd destroyed the family. But when the evidence of the embezzlement became undeniable, she quietly distanced herself from Margaret. My youngest brother Mark tried to stay neutral, but eventually cut contact with Margaret when his own wife found evidence that Margaret had been spreading rumors about their marriage. The legal proceedings took almost a year. Margaret's lawyer tried to claim that I was vindictive, that this was all revenge for a minor family disagreement. But the evidence was overwhelming. She was convicted of embezzlement, insurance fraud, and tax evasion. The judge, a woman with grandchildren of her own, was particularly harsh during sentencing. "Mrs. Williams," she said, "you have shown a pattern of manipulation, deception, and cruelty that spans decades. Your treatment of the victim, your own adopted daughter, and especially your psychological abuse of her child, demonstrates a callous disregard for the welfare of others that is truly shocking. The trust placed in you as an adoptive mother, as a community leader, and as a fiduciary has been grossly betrayed." Margaret received 5 years in prison and was ordered to make full restitution. The house was sold to pay back what she'd stolen from my trust fund, plus interest and penalties. But for me, the real victory came 6 months later. Emma and I were having lunch at our favorite diner when she looked up at me with those bright, intelligent eyes and said, "Mommy, I don't feel sad about Grandma Margaret anymore." "Oh? Why's that, sweetheart?" "Because Mrs. Rodriguez helped me understand that when someone is mean to you, it's because something is broken inside them, not because something is wrong with you, and also because I have a real family that loves me." She was right, of course. Emma had David and me, yes, but she also had Michael, who had stepped seamlessly into the role of devoted uncle. She had my found family, the friends who had chosen to be our family, the neighbors who treated her like their own grandchild, the community we'd built around love rather than blood or obligation. Margaret had tried to teach Emma that she didn't belong, that love was conditional, that family was about biology and worthiness. Instead, she had inadvertently taught us all something much more valuable: that the families we choose, the love we give freely and without condition, the bonds we build through kindness and loyalty, these are worth more than all the blood relations and social status in the world. A year after the sentencing, I received a letter from Margaret in prison. It was not an apology. Instead, it was a bitter screed about how I had ruined her life, how I was vindictive and cruel, how she had given me everything and I had repaid her with betrayal. I read it once, then burned it in our fireplace while Emma decorated Christmas cookies in the kitchen. The ashes mixed with the smoke and disappeared up the chimney, and I felt nothing but peace. That Christmas, we hosted dinner at our house. Michael brought his new girlfriend, a kindergarten teacher who adored Emma. Lisa came with her family, finally ready to rebuild relationships based on honesty instead of Margaret's manipulations. Mark stayed away, still processing everything, but sent a beautiful gift for Emma with a note saying he hoped to see us soon. But the most meaningful moment came when Emma, now 9 and radiant with confidence, stood up to make a toast with her cup of apple cider. "I want to thank everyone for being my real family," she said solemnly. "Not the family that says mean things and makes you feel bad, but the family that chooses to love you every day." As I watched my daughter, confident, loved, secure in her place in our chosen family, I realized that Margaret had given me one last gift, though she'd never know it. She had shown me exactly what kind of mother, what kind of person I never wanted to be. And in trying to break my child's spirit, she had instead revealed the unbreakable bonds that hold our real family together. The revenge I had taken was complete, But it wasn't the public humiliation or the prison sentence that satisfied me most. It was this. Emma knew, beyond any doubt, that she was loved, wanted, and cherished. She knew that family wasn't about blood or biology or obligation. It was about choice, commitment, and unconditional love. Margaret had tried to teach Emma she wasn't worthy of love. Instead, Emma had learned that some people simply aren't worthy of giving it. And that was the greatest revenge of all. My daughter's absolute certainty in her own worth, despite Margaret's attempt to destroy it. Outside, the snow was falling gently again, just like that terrible Christmas a year ago. But inside our home, surrounded by the people who had chosen to love us, the warmth was complete. Emma was safe, Margaret could never hurt her again, and justice, messy, complicated, but ultimately satisfying, had been served. Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction, sometimes it's about protection. Sometimes it's about ensuring that cruelty has consequences, that manipulation is exposed, that the innocent are defended. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, loving deeply, and building something beautiful from the ashes of what someone else tried to burn down. As I tucked Emma into bed that night, she looked up at me and smiled. "Mommy, this was the best Christmas ever." "Why's that, sweetheart?" "Because everyone here really wanted to be here, and everyone here really wanted me to be here too." I kissed her forehead and turned out the lights, my heart full of gratitude for the family we'd chosen and built together. Margaret was spending Christmas in a cold cell, facing the consequences of decades of cruelty and manipulation. But Emma was spending Christmas surrounded by love, secure in the knowledge that she belonged, that she was wanted, that she was home. And that, I thought as I watched her sleep peacefully in her own room, in our own house surrounded by our own chosen family, was the sweetest revenge of all.